In a world of more than 8 billion people, it's easy to assume that individually we could never make a lasting impact. Today, we'll be showcasing 5 individuals who did something extraordinary so that we can live in peace and prosperity today. From preventing World War III, to saving millions of lives through scientific advancements, these people are true heroes of modern history. James Blunt. The first on the list is known for all the reasons except for the reason we'll discuss today. You may know him as the singer of hit songs, but did you know that James Blunt also played a crucial role in averting World War III? Back in 1999, Blunt was a British Army captain leading a reconnaissance troop of 30,000 NATO soldiers into Kosovo. His mission was to capture Pristina airport before the Russian forces got there. However, when he arrived, he found out that the Russians had already seized the airport. Blunt received an order from NATO headquarters to advance on the airport and block the runway. But he realized that this would mean starting a fight with the Russians, who had tanks and guns ready to fire. He decided to disobey his orders and instead negotiated with the Russian commander for a peaceful solution. Blunt later said that he was willing to risk a court-martial for his decision, but he believed it was the right thing to do. He also said that he had the support of his commanding officer, General Mike Jackson, who famously told NATO, "I'm not going to start World War III for you." Thanks to Blunt's bravery and diplomacy, both sides agreed to share the airport peacefully until a deal was reached. Blunt's actions helped prevent a major escalation of violence and possibly saved millions of lives. Norman Bullock. Bullock was an American agronomist who developed a new type of wheat crop that could grow in harsh conditions and resist diseases. His wheat crop helped to boost food production and reduce hunger in many countries, especially in Asia and Latin America. Bullock started his career in Mexico, where he worked for a Rockefeller Foundation program to help rural farmers. He spent years breeding different varieties of wheat until he found one that was short, sturdy and high-yielding. He called it dwarf wheat, and it changed the world. Bullock's dwarf wheat was able to produce more grain per acre than any other crop before. It also needed less water and fertilizer than traditional wheat. It was so successful that it sparked a green revolution that spread to other crops and regions. Bullock's work saved millions of lives from starvation and malnutrition. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970 and he is credited with saving over 1 billion lives from starvation. So next time you eat a slice of bread or a bowl of noodles, remember that Norman Bullock is the man who made it possible. Morris Hillman. If you have ever received a vaccine shot, chances are, you have Morris Hillman to thank for it. He was the scientist who developed more than 40 vaccines for various diseases, making him the most successful vaccinologist in history. Morris Hillman was born in 1919 in Montana, where he lived on a farm with his family. He became fascinated by microbes after his mother died of pneumonia when he was young. Hillman dedicated his life to finding ways to prevent and cure diseases. He worked on vaccines for measles, mumps, hepatitis A and B, chickenpox, meningitis, pneumonia and influenza. He also discovered that some vaccines were contaminated with cancer-causing viruses and found ways to make them safer. Hillman's vaccines have saved millions of lives and have eradicated or reduced many common childhood diseases. Hillman once said, "My reward is that I can look back at my life and say I did something useful for society." Morris Hillman died in 2005 at the age of 85. He left behind a legacy of innovation and compassion that continues to benefit humanity today. The last 2 people on our list both acted at independent times in history to prevent the outbreak of nuclear war between the US and the USSR. Vasily Arkhipov. Soviet naval officer, Vasily Arkhipov, was one of the 3 officers on board the Soviet submarine B-59 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. One of 5 Soviet submarines around Cuba, Archipov's submarine was detected by US surface ships. The US Navy tried to force the submarine to surface by dropping depth charges, an explosive device that creates loud noise and can damage submarines lurking below. The Soviet crew thought they were under attack and that a war had already begun. As such, they prepared to launch a nuclear torpedo at the US ships. Unlike other Soviet submarines, B-59 required the consent of all 3 officers to fire a nuclear weapon. The captain and political officer both agreed to launch the torpedo. Arkhipov was the only one who refused to give his consent, arguing that they should try to contact Moscow first and avoid escalating the situation. His decision averted a possible nuclear war that could have killed millions of people and destroyed civilization as we know it. Arkhipov died in 1998 at age 72 from radiation exposure that he had received during an earlier accident on another submarine. Stanislav Petrov. Stanislav Petrov was another member of the Soviet armed forces who, like Arkhipov, acted against protocol to prevent a nuclear war between the US and the USSR. This time in 1983. Petrov was in charge of monitoring the Soviet early warning system that detected incoming missile attacks. On September 26, 1983, he received an alarm that 5 US missiles were heading towards the Soviet Union. Instead of reporting the alarm to his superiors, who would have likely ordered a retaliatory strike, he decided to ignore it and treat it as a false alarm. He reasoned that if the US really wanted to start a war, they would have launched more than 5 missiles. He was right. The alarm was caused by a malfunction in the satellite system that mistook sunlight reflections for missile launchers. Petrov's action prevented a nuclear war that could have killed millions of people and triggered a nuclear winter. However, he was not rewarded for his courage and wisdom. Instead, he was reprimanded for not following protocol and later retired from the military. He died in 2017 at age 77 from pneumonia. This unfortunate lack of appreciation sets Petrov apart in this list of incredible characters, but this channel hopes to continue the theme of shining a spotlight on overlooked events and people throughout human history. Please subscribe to stay up to date on future videos.